Good evening, folks. This is James MacArthur coming to you live on this Monday afternoon as we are in the midst of the storm. Hurricane Sandy is upon us. Folks, this is going to be a very interesting show, a little bit of a different kind of podcast if you've never heard these programs before. But we do them daily now, daily on this same station, this same place on the internet. I have a couple breaking news items we definitely want to get out the way at the top of the show and the top of the flow here. Number one is the roadway restriction imposed by the mayor. This was done just moments ago before we went on air. Basically, if you're not in uniform, if you're not emergency personnel, the mayor does not want you on the road for safety reasons. And for those that are allowed, a 45 mile per hour speed limit has been imposed. Now, a little bit later in the show, I will tell you a little problem I have with that. Just a little problem. I mean, it's Mayor Rollins Blake, after all. It's really not hard to find, to take issue with her. But repeating, there is now in place a roadway restriction. They don't want you on the roads. You don't have, if you're not essential emergency personnel, stay in. And as we've been hearing all day, hunker down. The other news item we have to mention at the top of the show is a scam alert. This is directly off the Baltimore crime blog, which is curated by Marcy Brennan, a local author. And for the folks in Hamilton, this is where this scam alert took place. But we want to inform everyone everywhere because you don't know where these guys may be moving. Be on the lookout in Hamilton or anywhere for two guys, one wearing a white jacket and an Angry Birds cap. He's a white gentleman. And the other in a red jacket. He was not seen up close. They're attempting to get into houses by knocking on the door and saying they're from the DPW, Department of Public Works. The police say to call them if anyone without credentials comes to your door. And this happened on Sefton and Westfield not that long ago. But again, you know, people knocking on doors. And this is a common ploy with the elderly where they knock on the door, claim to be an authority. And these vulnerable members of our population let the folks in. We've had them tied up and beaten and robbed. It's a terrible thing that goes on in Baltimore where it just seems like there's never any pity for the itty bitty, as the great Tupac Shakur once said. Folks, we will be getting into today's show right after this musical break. Sit back, relax, tell a friend, retweet the link, and definitely follow the program. We'll be right back.
Paved with gold, lifted some stones, saw the skin and bones of a city without a soul. I went out walking under an atomic sky where the ground won't turn and the rain it burns like the tears when I said goodbye. Yeah, I went with nothing nothing but the thought of you. I went wandering. I went drifting through the capitals of tin, where men can't walk or freely talk, and sons turn their fathers in. I stopped outside a church house where the citizens like to sit. They say they want the kingdom, but they don't want God in it. I went out riding down that old 8 lane. I passed by 1,000 signs looking for my own name. I went with nothing but the thought you'd be there too, looking for you. I went out there in search of experience, to taste and to touch and to feel as much as a man can before he repents. I went out searching, looking for one good man, a spirit who would not bend or break, who would sit at his Father's right hand. I went out walking with the Bible and the gun. The Word of God lay heavy on my heart. I was sure I was the one. Now, Jesus, don't you wait up. Jesus, I'll be home soon. Yeah, I went out for the papers, told her I'd be back by noon. Yeah, I left with nothing but the thought you'd be there too, looking for you. Yeah, I left with nothing but the thought of you. I went wandering.
Welcome back, folks. Welcome back. You are listening to the Monday edition of The Spectator Speaks. I'm your host, James MacArthur. This is the Hurricane edition. Let's listen to some of this wonderful hurricane sounds from right outside my big studio window. Yeah, Sandy is here, and I'm glad so far, at least in our local area, it does not appear to be particularly devastating. We know that if you're on the coastal area, it's been bad. We know Ocean City got pretty battered with the pier being just about destroyed. According to Adam May on Twitter, we understand that now in the BGE, listening in the BGE service area, there are 40,000 people without power. But just from what I can see and the wind measurements on my instrumentation here, the winds are strong and gusty, but again, not nearly as destructive as a storm of this magnitude can be. Of course, it's still early, and there's a lot in front of us. So, we're not saying it's not a big deal, and we're not downplaying it. Just reporting and observing what is going on right now. This show is brought to you in part by Darker Than Blue Cafe, which is located on 3034 Greenmount Avenue. Excellent restaurant, fine dining in North Baltimore, in the heart of Waverly. It is soul food with a southern flair. Check out the website, darkerthanbluecafe.com. They're closed on Mondays anyhow, and they usually open Tuesday evenings, 5 p.m. to 9 p.m. Hopefully tomorrow at 5 they'll be reopened, and this storm will be long gone. I know it's supposed to be intensifying by then, but you never know with these things. So let's hope and pray that Sandy will have gone and pounded sand or something by the time we get to 5 p.m. tomorrow, so you can go check out Darker Than Blue Cafe. Again, that website is darkerthanbluecafe.com. You will not be disappointed by visiting this award-winning restaurant in North Baltimore on fabulous Greenmount Avenue in beautiful downtown Waverly. Today's show is a big deal, folks. It really, really is a big deal. I'll tell you why. I know a lot of you are listening for the first time. Like I said yesterday, when I started doing these podcasts, the only person listening was my mom. And, the audience really grew. I got my brother to listen, and now even my sister. So, that's quite, we've tripled the size of our audience. So it's just wonderful, wonderful, wonderful to have you guys come along. I don't have the sound effects. I know if I did, you'd be hearing crickets right about now. But, I try to be somewhat entertaining when I bring information. There is definitely a little bit of sarcasm in almost everything I do. And a lot of times it's delivered with a straight face, deadpan. And folks will mistake a joke of mine for something seriously. But I really want to thank all of you for making the numbers grow. A lot more of you are listening. Most of you listening on the podcast because, there's no scheduled time for when I do these things. It all depends on what's going on. It depends on how many murders I've been chasing down the night before, how many unplanned, unscheduled interviews I get with people closely related to these stories. As you know, it's been a wild weekend, a wild last few days. Been pretty pleased with the quality of work that I've been able to put out here, bringing it to you, the wonderful followers of the Baltimore Spectator, baltimorespectator.com. This marks the 11th episode of The Spectator Speaks, but more remarkable than that is that it's the 7th uninterrupted daily podcast I've done in this series. There's 11 total of this particular series, but I've gone on every day now for the last 7 days. And, I'm pretty excited about that, and I'm just excited, really, that you're here with me. So, thank you. See, isn't this a fun show? I mean, I got a live in-studio audience and everything. Listen, I'm a social media, new media madman. I mean, let's face it, there are a few people doing what I do, doing the live podcast. I'm able to write fairly well and bringing you exclusive news stories. I tweet live from scenes. I'm a pretty decent photographer. I send out video. I'm coming at you. As I often say, I'm a multimedia threat in this business. But enough about me. Let's go to the Twitter. The Baltimore Brew, which if you don't follow, I highly recommend you do. Baltimore Brew, at Baltimore Brew, that is. They're one of the best local independent media sources here. No, they're not going to have a bunch of breaking news like I do. That's not their focus. But what their focus is on crazy, zany, whacked out things our local government does that just makes little sense to anyone. A lot of the stories you will see in there, the Sun will later copy or may ignore and never show. But you need to know where your tax dollars are going. Just this morning, I ran into Comptroller Joan Pratt. I mean, have you been following the phone fiasco? This stupidity going on at City Hall with the mayor the mayor's office trying to hide stuff from the comptroller and all this infighting, which is no wonder nothing is really getting accomplished in the city. Also on Twitter, during the show, during the musical break, Trisha, who is at Trisha ATR, responded to what the brew, what my response to the brew. The brew put out a story, and at the bottom of the story, we learned that even during the storm and during the emergency, volunteers at the Barks Animal Shelter were being ticketed by parking enforcement. And it's like, really? Is this a priority? Surely expired meters aren't a priority today. And my response was, the bastards! What a lame, retarded city. Now, Trisha said, that I should consider refraining from use of the R word. And there are many far less offensive and more creative choices. I will agree that there are more creative choices. I'm a pretty creative guy, but I've had a long past few days. I had a lot of trouble getting everything set up to get the show out. And maybe I'm just spent on creativity, and I just wanted to get right out to it. And that was the most appropriate word I was able to come up with at the time. And it just made me think about how far off the deep end we've gone with political correctness. There are some words that people can take offense at, and with good reason, but at the same time, myself being an amateur history scholar, being a bit of a wordsmith, I like to really get to the root of a word and what it really means, despite what it may mean in the vernacular, besides however it may have been adulterated or twisted. The word retarded is defined simply as occurring or developing later than desired or expected. In other words, delayed. And this government is delayed. This government is slow. It is not working. It is retarded, as in, that's what's happened to the growth here has been retarded. We're not calling a person retarded, but that's what's going on. That's why Baltimore is losing population rapidly and each year for the last 30 years, and surrounding counties are growing because the city government here is truly retarded. They're not progressing. They're regressing, retarded, very, very similar word, similar roots. So my apologies if that came out in an offensive manner initially. It certainly was not meant to be that way. Give a shout out to Dennis the Cynic out there, also on Twitter. Now, let's get into the program here. We got to talk about the hurricane. Everybody else is talking about it. I'll give you a little bit of history on hurricanes. Again, something you may not hear in the nonstop coverage about Sandy. Hey, listen, I understand we need to prepare folks. We need to make folks aware. But we also need to not wear folks down. Excessive coverage, repeating the same things over and over again. We also ought not to scare folks. As some of you know, I've shared in other broadcasts, I survived a number of hurricanes growing up in the West Indies in the Caribbean. One of the most devastating hurricanes in history was Hurricane Hugo 23 years ago. I was there. I was in my little house on the islands as the rooftop was ripped off and the water started cascading in down the stairs. And I was there hunkered down underneath a dining table, just fearing for my life, to be honest, as the massive winds, we're talking about winds 150 miles an hour, way greater than what's currently going on in Baltimore, were swirling all around. Multiple tornadoes were formed. Water's pouring through the house, nowhere to run, nowhere to hide, hunkered down under a dining room table because there's no roof. You never knew when some heavy, large piece of debris would just fly in and crush you, knock you out or kill you or something. So it was a pretty scary experience, very loud. When a hurricane passes directly over your position, it is so intensely loud, it's like standing behind a jet turbine engine. And that's something I experienced. But I'll give you another aspect of hurricanes in the islands, because every year there is a hurricane season down there. This type of thing with tracking the storm and the coverage, although not quite as crazy as it's become up here, this is an annual part of life when you live in the islands, because hurricane season comes around every year from June 1st till actually November 30th is the technical ending of hurricane season, although it rarely ever goes that late. A November hurricane is almost unheard of. A late October hurricane, as we're experiencing now, is particularly rare. The hurricane season generally peaks in mid-August into September. If you recall some of the more devastating hurricanes we've had recently, well, Irene, that was within that time period. Right? Well, we know Rita, Katrina, those definitely were, and Hugo, which I survived, was. And even I think Hurricane Gilbert, which destroyed Jamaica way back in 1988. I actually worked on disaster relief down there for a private non-governmental organization. But yeah, so the folks in the islands deal with hurricanes yearly. They deal with the loss of property and unfortunately sometimes loss of life. And an interesting local culture has evolved, if you will, around dealing with these annual occurrences of hurricanes. Sometimes they're minor, the hurricanes, sometimes they're devastating. There is a tradition in the United States Virgin Islands known as Hurricane Supplication Day. Every year on the fourth Monday in July, I bet you never heard this on your local mainstream media. Every year on the fourth Monday in July, in the United States Virgin Islands, main islands being St. Croix, St. Thomas, and St. John, Hurricane Supplication Day marks the beginning of the hurricane season. There are special church services for people where people pray for safety from the storms that regularly ravage these Caribbean islands. And at the end of the hurricane season in October, there is Hurricane Thanksgiving Day. Now think about that. If you're around to see the end of the hurricane season when you live in the tropics where these hurricanes, some of them very powerful, come every year, you have a lot to give thanks for. So there are church services held on the third Monday in October every year so that islanders can give thanks for being spared the destruction of a storm. Even if your house was destroyed, your life isn't. You have a reason to give thanks. So that's a Virgin Islands tradition going on for some time now. Hurricane Supplication Day at the beginning of the hurricane season, followed by Hurricane Thanksgiving Day. And I was inspired by that to try a little bit of a social consciousness experiment, if you will. This morning at 6 a.m., I created an invite on Facebook to see if people would be willing to join with me at 12 noon in a massive display of faith in praying for protection and God's grace, divine intervention in this hurricane. I believe in prayer personally. I won't get too far into it. Folks get all crazy when you talk about religion on a talk radio program or podcast, but nonetheless, for people who are believers, for people who have faith, for people who believe in a higher power, no matter what your name for him may be, we believe that prayer is effective. We may not always get what we ask for in prayer, but nonetheless, we believe it is an effective exercise. So put out the invite, and, folks were joining and inviting other people. And before you know it, the few people I invited so many other people. Over 1,200 people received this invite. That is the massive power of social media, the viral capability. Of course, not everyone responded. A lot of people don't check their Facebook regularly. A lot of people automatically ignore invites to just about any event. I typically do. But nonetheless, we had a few dozen people who clicked on and said they would do this and join in wherever they are, including people in other countries, by the way. One woman all the way in Germany, to pause at noon Eastern time, reflect, meditate, whisper a prayer for protection from this massive approaching storm. And a prayer is an individual thing. For some people, it's literally just a simple thought. For other people, it's a on your knees, pleading, begging experience. And it doesn't matter much how you do it. It's just more important that you do it. And when you do it, you have faith. So that experiment I did, I thank you for participating in it if you're listening and you were a part of it. And quite frankly, maybe it worked. Yeah, the storm's here, but you're listening to me. You have power. I have power. I'm not getting rained on in my house. My rooftop hasn't been ripped off. So who knows? And with that, before we move on in the show, and I'm going to be doing this a lot more in shows. Some of you are going to freak out. Some of you are not going to listen anymore, and that's fine. But I share my faith. I don't force it, but I share it. And I will simply read verses from Scripture from time to time. Won't go into it, won't be a sermon, but I will share it with you. And today, 1 Peter 5, chapter 5, 6 and 7 comes to mind. It says, "Humble yourselves, therefore, under the mighty hand of God, that he may exalt you at the proper time, casting all your anxiety upon him, because he cares for you." And that's the bit of Scripture that I wanted to share with you today. Now, I'm going to go to a quick commercial break. I want you to listen very carefully, because I do this, part of why I do these podcasts and the videos and all these things, I want to inspire more people to get involved with independent citizen journalism in Baltimore. No, you don't have to do all the things I'm doing. Believe me, I invest a lot of time and money into this because I'm doing a lot to show that it can be done. But if I can do all these different things, there's somebody out there who can do. Just pick one and do it. Decide you're going to go to City Hall sometimes, take notes and blog about what you see. Decide maybe you're going to carry around a camera phone and videotape emergency incidents as you see them, not getting in the way, but stand in a safe distance, and put it out on Twitter, put it out on Facebook. The more people we have doing these things, the more eyes and ears, the better informed we are. The better informed we are, the wiser we are, the better choices we're able to make. And you never know what you may see. You never know. God forbid the next 9/11 or something happens right in front of you, and you're able to go live on air like I am and podcast and be the first person on scene reporting of something and informing the whole world. You just never know. I mean, this Spreaker program that we're using here has a phone app, which I have used. Part of it you heard in the interview with the young lady yesterday. You can right on your phone, and you can broadcast live to the world. There is no limit to how many people can click on the show and listen in. So without further, I just want you to listen and be inspired by the folks here at Spreaker. And we're back, folks. As you know, I am not a big fan of your governor, Martin O'Malley. Before we came on air, I put on Twitter the link to a satirical video I did of the governor and I. The governor doesn't like me. It's on YouTube. You can just search on YouTube, "The governor doesn't like me." And it's true. He doesn't like me, and that's fine. I don't like him. He spoke to us today and explained why we should stay off the road and, just some of his thoughts on the storm. This clip is courtesy of WBAL I'm about to share with you. And let's listen to your governor, Martin O'Malley, for a moment here.
We rarely ever close down metro service, light rail, buses. Buses are usually the last thing we close down, so there will be very dangerous conditions out on the roads tomorrow. And we are urging all citizens to hunker down at home and stay off the roads tomorrow. One of the challenges.
Now, wait a minute. I had to pause that. Did you hear that term? Hunker down. It's kind of funny because he used it. And a short while later, your mayor went on Twitter and she said, "Stay safe and shelter in place, hunker down." And she gave it a hashtag. For roadways may be unsafe. If you must drive, watch for standing water. But, Madam Mayor, really? Must all your ideas come from Martin O'Malley? Is there any original thought in that brain? Let's go back to the governor.
Challenges in any big storm like this is putting first responders at risk to respond to accidents or ambulance runs or other sorts of things. Some of those are inevitable. People don't schedule their heart attacks, but people do not have to be out on the road tomorrow and should not be out on the road tomorrow. Early voting it was canceled for tomorrow. We will pick up that day on by adding a day on Friday. But thank you for the question. Citizens are urged to stay off the roads tomorrow. This is a very unpredictable storm, and as a sign of that unpredictable nature. We surveyed a number of watermen up and down the eastern shore, and the response we got back from all of their elemental wisdom was that it's really hard to predict what this storm will do in terms of flooding or low-lying areas, the winds, the waves, and the like. We expect a very strong ocean surge, which is why we've been urging people to get out of Ocean City and go to higher ground. The waves that we anticipate there should be on a par with what we saw in Hurricane Gloria. So that was quite a number of years ago that we last saw waves that are predicted to be as large as they are going to be in Ocean City. The tidal flooding in the Chesapeake Bay area, very, very tricky thing to predict. So citizens are urged, while their power is still up, to go online, go to the maryland.gov site. You can check out the inundation levels and see where your home lies. A lot of people know whether or not they're in a low-lying area. Some do not, and we urge them to go online and check it out for themselves.
That was your governor, Martin O'Malley. I apologize for the crappy audio. I mean, the quality was fairly poor, but something was up with his voice, too. I don't know. It sounded a little hoarse. Maybe he was shouting so much for a yes on 6 or the gambling or something. Or maybe he's just been hitting the bottle really hard and it's affecting it's affecting his vocal cord clarity. I don't know, but it didn't sound like the Martin O'Malley I'm used to hearing. It just didn't sound good. So this was done before, the road closure took place today. But you heard him saying why he wanted you to stay off the road and only emergency personnel. And of course, as we said at the top of the show, your Madam Mayor has issued the same request. But let's hear from her as she these guys love TV, they love publicity, they love just getting out and putting their face there, even if what they're saying isn't necessarily profound. Your mayor was on CNN today. They love getting the national spotlight. Here she is talking to Soledad O'Brien.
People are heeding the warnings that even though Irene, at least where I am, was not such a tough storm, they're still really understanding that there's a big difference between what Irene brought and what Sandy could bring. Are you seeing the same thing?
We are seeing the same thing, Soledad. And I feel really bad for you. I wish you were in Baltimore. We'd give you a nice covered shot, a nice inside shot, so you wouldn't be out in the weather. But people are. They are heeding the warning. The roads are pretty much clear. And my concern, among other things, as Mayor Nutter mentioned, is to make sure that people aren't driving through standing water. That's a big danger, particularly in a city like Baltimore. We have the harbor and a lot of communities surrounding the harbor. We just want people to be safe.
So tell me what you're most concerned about. Obviously, the standing water, as you just mentioned, but is it the power outages that worry you the most? Is it the potential for flooding across the city?
It's more the power outages, and there's so many trees in Baltimore and in our communities. With the trees coming down, increasing the power outages, and just to make sure that people are prepared in their homes. We've been putting out the message for days to make sure you have your non-perishable foods, your battery-operated radios, your flashlights, the things that you need so you can ride out this storm. This is a slow-moving storm, and I think people forget that we can't start the restorations, or BGE can't start the restorations until after the storm has moved. So you have to be prepared to ride out this storm in place.
Yeah, I think sometimes people forget how long 3 days is. It's not just a couple of cans of soup. It's a decent amount of water and a decent amount of food. Do you feel like you're getting all the assistance from the state and from the feds as well?
Yeah, we have great communications with the federal government. President Obama's been fantastic. And Governor O'Malley, we've got great communications. We're already sharing not just information, but equipment and supplies. We have our preposition.
Wait a minute. Now, she said great communication with O'Malley. No kidding. I mean, she can't even come up. Speaking of not being creative, hunker down. Let's go back to the mayor.
First responders who've been excellent, going above and beyond to make sure that we have everyone in place that needs to be: fire, police, everyone.
Baltimore Mayor Stephanie Rawlings Blake joining us this morning. Thank you, ma'am. We appreciate your time. And I have a feeling we'll be talking with all the mayors that we've been talking to this morning, and the governors as well, as the storm gets closer, and then certainly in the aftermath as well.
Well, there's your mayor, folks. I mean, she's sounding pretty good there. Pretty good for a programmed robot. Anyhow, look, here's my problem with the governor and the mayor on this whole roadway restriction thing. taxi cabs. They're not emergency personnel, but they are still on the road. Guess why? Believe it or not, even though your narrow-minded governor, your nearsighted mayor has not mentioned it, haven't thought about it, some of these essential personnel, policemen, firemen, doctors, nurses, use taxi cabs to get to work. And after they're out of the car, the cab is now on the road, solo, and some of your goons, police officers, may want to jack these guys up because you don't have the wherewithal, the sensibility to explain, to declare that we're allowing them to be part of the solution to help ensure that these doctors or nurses or firemen or policemen, some of them need cabs. Their cars may have broken down. They may have one car which they're leaving at home with the spouse while they go into work a 12-hour shift. We want to work with the cabs and the taxi drivers as an integral part of our transportation infrastructure, especially since we closed the buses down, the subways down, the light rail, the trains. Get with it, guys. Get with it, Governor. Get with it, Mayor. But I know blue-collar workers like taxi drivers are way too lowly for you to even consider being important or critical or essential. You didn't think about that, did you? That they get your people to work to serve the rest of us in the community. Nope, you didn't think about that, and your mainstream media did not tell you anything about this because, well, that's why you listen to me, because I bring you news and views simply just not commonly heard. So that's my beef with the mayor and the governor's roadway closure. Now, I promised I would bag on the sun. I love doing it. They're an easy punching bag. Want to give a shout out to Meganomics. Meg is on Twitter. She's at Meganomics. That's MEGHANOMICS. Thank you for reiterating that retarded means slow in the dictionary. And Meg also had a big interest in my bash on the Baltimore Sun. My biggest story, still the headline, still not fully updated at all on the BaltimoreSpectator.com, is the tragic story of the stabbing. Still to this day, the last homicide we've had reported in Baltimore City, which is a great thing. Normally we get them every day. We haven't even had a shooting since that incident on Saturday morning when Sean Brown was stabbed and killed by his girlfriend, the mother of his child, while he was trying to attack her, trying to abduct her. Actually had an accomplice, which we understand is not being sought as a suspect. But if you listen to the interview, you will know from the victim, who spoke to me exclusively, that there was an accomplice in her attempted abduction before she had to commit the ultimate act of self-defense and take the life of this very troubled 40-year-old man. I also spoke with his brother last night. I want to thank both, we're calling her Mary. She wishes to not have her name disclosed at this point. But I want to thank her sincerely for coming on and giving me so much of her time and sharing her story with me. And I want to thank Mr. Tyrone Tyler, the brother of the deceased, for sharing so much of the troubled, sordid past of this young man who lost his life Saturday morning. My problem with the Sun. My problem with the Baltimore Sun. Let me join your hand. You see, in their original story, published a little bit after 4 p.m. on Saturday, they didn't have a name. They didn't have a lot of information on this same case. I busted the story wide open, provided information no one else had, no one else still has. And your daily newspaper that claims light for all, instead of being good, upstanding, responsible journalism, decides to suppress the truth that has been revealed by the Baltimore Spectator, has been confirmed by the actual people involved, and has this crappy story up with very little information still. Now, do you know why they won't update their story? Do you know why the story says the victim's name and age were not released, although I just told you Sean Brown was 40 years old? His girlfriend confirmed it, his brother confirmed it, but the son won't update it because they hate the Baltimore Spectator, because the big boys in media do not want to give credit to a little independent like myself, able to outscoop them, outjuke them, and out-report them sometimes. That's why. And they call themselves Light for All? Are you kidding me? But you see, if I wasn't talking to you here today, you wouldn't know that this thing happens on a regular basis. The truth is, they listened to my broadcast Saturday night when I had the first update, when I revealed to the world, to Baltimore, the identity and the details of what happened in this case. So, Meg, this is part of what I despise about this organization and the way they perform the craft of journalism. The story has an update on it at 9:05. Interestingly enough, my show aired at 8:40. They got information from my show, updated the story, and gave no credit as to where the information came from. This is dishonesty, and it is a lack of journalistic integrity. And namely, the line says, a police official said a female suspect who was taken into custody has been released pending further investigation. Their story initially said a female suspect was taken into custody, which is true. I updated the information, but no. That bastard paper Baltimore Sun, who is doing such a disservice to the great H.L. Mencken, who once worked there, gave me absolutely no credit for giving them the new information that they needed. So here's a story that ordinarily would be a pretty big story. A woman kills a man in self-defense, is released the same day, not charged, had a long history of domestic abuse. These are compelling stories. It's a sad story, it's a tragic story, but it's a compelling story nonetheless, and it's buried in the paper. No one's covering it, no one's repeating it. Not because it's not a big story, not because of Sandy, but because I, James MacArthur, brought it to you, and no one wants to give me credit because it would hurt them so much. If things had been reversed, if they had gotten the scoop on this, they had gotten the exclusive information, if they had received the details like I did so early on, believe me, it would be headline news. It would be a breaking story. It would be new details tonight on the incident that happened in Baltimore on Saturday morning. But no mention. I'm not complaining. I'm not whining. I'm simply pointing out to you the way in which your mainstream media operates, that I think is very important you understand, because these things are happening in story after story all the time, and you never know about it. And if you only get your news from the Baltimore Sun or other mainstream, you're not getting the whole truth, as they say in the courts. You may get some truth, but you're not getting the whole truth, and you're certainly not getting nothing but the truth. So that's my beef with the Baltimore Sun today. I thank you for being curious about it, Meg, and I thank you for listening. No, that's not the song I wanted to play. Live radio, gotta love it. Let's stop that real quick, and let's get something else in here. New York may be hit a lot worse by this storm than we are here in Baltimore, than we may be. So we want to keep the folks in New York in our thoughts and prayers as we come to near closing in today's podcast. Wow, 44 minutes into this, and a few of you are still listening. Thank you so much. Thank you. Be right back. Oh, by the way, this song here is dedicated to Mayor Zidotes on Twitter. New York, baby.
New York, these vagabond shoes, they are longing to stray right through the very heart of it. New York, I want to wake up in that city that doesn't sleep and find I'm king of the hill, top of the heap. My little town blues, they are melting away I'm gonna make a brand new start of it in old New York. If I can make it there, I'll make it anywhere. It's up to you, New York, New York.
By the way, aren't we just so lucky that the Baltimore Sun has taken down their paywall because of Hurricane Sandy? Isn't that so awesome that, you don't have to pay to read that crap? Oh my gosh. I mean, really, a paywall? A paywall? For a paper with a shrinking readership, less than subscription? Get with it, guys, seriously.
Every time I hit that note, I get such a pain right over here. These are little town blues.
Baltimore Sun, we love you. You're the only paper we have in our charming little town. We really do love you. But I wish we could do without you. I really do.
Right there in old New York. And you bet your bippy baby. If I can make it there, you know I'm gonna make it just about anywhere. Come on, come through New York, New York, New York.
Oh man. I wasn't planning to play the whole song, but this old Blue Eyes. I mean, how can you cut off old Blue Eyes? Guess who follows me on Twitter, by the way? Seriously, no lie, you can look this up. Nancy Sinatra. The woman is still hot. Remember, these boots are made for walking? Frank's daughter, she actually follows me on Twitter. I met her a few times. I have some home video of her looking right into my camera, singing, as if singing to me. Wonderful, wonderful woman, great talent. Great philanthropist and humanitarian, actually. But yeah, I couldn't cut off Frank. I just couldn't. You know what the F in AF means? My first name is not James. I go by it professionally, but I have two middle names. My name is ridiculously long, all told together, and it just doesn't flow well. So I go by mostly James MacArthur or AF James MacArthur, but F stands for Frank. So I had to let old Blue Eyes play. Well, folks, you have done it again. You have sat here with me and listened to another fantabulous episode of The Spectator Speaks. I thank you for listening. Even you, Justin Fenton, who is one of our most loyal listeners. We thank him for listening along, too, even when we beat the hell out of the Baltimore Sun. We're not beating the hell out of Justin, not usually. I mean, we give him a few jabs every now and then, occasional fat lip, occasional bloody nose. But no need for a knockout punch. The guy does pretty good work, and we really want to encourage him to stick around, even if we don't like his employers, we don't like his bosses, and we don't like the general tone and direction of the paper he works for. Folks, you can email me at macarthurmedia.com. I'm sorry. No, scratch that. macarthurmedia@gmail.com. My website is BaltimoreSpectator.com. Like I said, I am a multimedia, new media, social media king. I really am. I'm all over the place. The Twitter, that's Balto Spectator. We're on Facebook at facebook.com/Baltimore Spectator. The Spreaker show, where we have multiple shows, numerous episodes on there, a few thousand listens, over 1,000 listens has happened now. My return to my long-running blogtalkradio.com show, where we started a new series every Thursday night. We do a call-in show Wonderful show, 7 p.m. on Thursdays. We even had Martin O'Malley's former press secretary, Sean Adamak, was a guest there a couple of weeks ago. So again, I just thank you for coming along and helping to grow this wonderful, fun little project of mine. I don't know if you can tell, I am having a lot of fun doing this, and I really, sincerely, honestly hope you've had a lot of fun listening. We do need your support, your financial support too, so we can keep doing this. At the BaltimoreSpectator.com, upper left-hand corner, there is a tip jar. Click on it. It takes you to a secure server. We're not asking for a lot. If you like this, if you like the reports, if you like the breaking news, the crime scene reporting, literally $1 or $2 a month would be fabulous. $1. You can do that. It's less than you pay for a cup of Starbucks coffee these days. Anyways, not going to beg, but definitely going to remind you continually each time that your support is greatly desired and appreciated. Several of you have helped out, and we thank you sincerely. And let's see here, looking over my notes, I think that's about it. I want to make sure we got everything here. Remember, Sandy is still upon us, so I want you to hunker down. This is James MacArthur reminding you to be blessed, be well, be prepared, and be more. Good day, folks. Catch you on Twitter. I also want to give a quick shout out to Larry the celebrity cab driver, for being such an asset, such a help in finding these witnesses, locating these people, arranging these interviews, and also to Shorty Davis, the toilet bomber, listening in via Facebook. Thank you so much, guys. This show is copyright 2012. See you tomorrow.
They're out in the country where the mountains high. Never coming back here till the day I